Greetings, spiritual warriors. Welcome to our weekly spiritual warriorship Krishna.com live program where we read, discuss, hear from Bhakti Tirtha Swami, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami's spiritual warrior books. We are presently in Spiritual Warrior 2, Chapter 7, entitled Loving Our Neighbors. Before we went to this chapter, we had gone to, we were in Spiritual Warrior 4, and the chapter was Choosing Love Over Fear. But before I go into our chapter work, I hope everyone had a blessed, happy holiday, which seems so far away. We're in December now. And for me, I'm still, I guess you'd say, floating on the sound of the holy name. Here in Alachua, last weekend we had our first, it's advertised, first annual 24-hour kirtan. And on Friday, the hours were 9 to 9 on Friday and 9 to whatever on Saturday, because it just went on. But it was really a wonderful, wonderful experience to hear the holy name hour after hour. We had wonderful artists. Here in Alachua, we have quite a few kirtan presenters, and then from out of even out of the country, Madhava Das was here from Switzerland. Karnamrita Dasi was here, I believe from California, I'm not sure. And there was another young lady, what's her name, from UK? Katrina. Katrina?
Chakrini.
Huh?
Chakrini.
Chakrini from UK. It was just so wonderful. So even talking about it, I feel the power of the holy name. I hope some of you were able to watch and hear some of it. But if not, in a few weeks, I understand Krishna.com will have it for download or whatever they do. So here we are. About to take a new adventure. Of course, we began this adventure a couple of weeks ago of this new chapter, Loving Your Neighbor as Yourself. But before I go there, I want to read what Prabhupada says about love. It's coming from, well, that was when we did the chapter, What is Love? This is from Journey of Self-Discovery, and Prabhupada states that Krishna consciousness is loving consciousness. And he says everyone is frustrated. Husband, wives, boys, girls. Everywhere there is frustration, because our loving propensity is not being utilized properly. He goes on to explain how love is most fully experienced when directed toward the Supreme Person, Krishna, who can perfectly and completely reciprocate with everyone. And he states this is the secret of lasting happiness. So we've been talking a lot about love, choosing love over fear. There were many points that came up out of that particular class that His Holiness gave. I hope you found some pointers to put into your everyday practice and life to experience this happiness and this love. So I'm going to just quickly note what we had touched on before, where he reminds us that all around us we see the results of industrial paradigm. What happens? It focuses on commodities and money, and its worship of fame, power, and control. So what happens as a result of that? Modern culture does not give human beings and other living creatures the respect that they deserve. And our planet itself, which is a living being, suffers profoundly from a lack of love. And what happens? We treat this earth and really other species of life with such disregard that all around us are appearing symptoms of serious illness. And we've seen it this past year, in fact. Floods, famines, earthquakes, droughts, hurricanes, plagues, and countless other scourges. And if we know the expression, there's no accident. Mother Earth is sick of what we have done to her. And in addition, instead of relating to other humans with love, care, and compassion, we manipulate and exploit them in a vain search for self-gratification. Now you'd say, wow, that sounds pretty bad. What is the solution? Is there a solution? Love. Loving relationships are the way to counteract this negative. He tells us that there's a need for a culture of love. The planet will not be healthy until we gain a deeper understanding of the soul and the universal love we all share. As parts and parcels of God, we naturally belong to a culture of love, liberation, and constant celebration. Now, when we extend love and joy to others, we experience ever deepening levels of God's love. The world sorely needs a deeper sense of community and more mature understanding of personal happiness, both of which depend upon our willingness to raise individual and collective consciousness by sharing our love with others. And as we've stated, the concept of spiritual warriorship in the battle, the weapons are love and caring, and the battleground is consciousness. So as we practice, learn, and grow and understand and practice our consciousness, we can help others. I want to go back before I go further, because we're talking about love, and if you have Spiritual Warrior 2 and you're not reading at the present, you might, when you have time, take it out and just go to the introduction, which has the title, The School of Love. I wanted to quote to you just a section of this, and I said I must control myself not to go through the whole thing again. It's really powerful. But he tells us that life is a school of love. In the school, we are not just hungry, but we're starving for love. And starvation is a life-threatening affair. A person in this predicament wants to survive, but if they do not get food and water in time, they will fall sick and even die. That's starvation. When you're starving, you need food and water. Now just think of the difficulty involved in trying to live a so-called normal life if you don't have food, water, or proper shelter. It's very difficult. If we take this reflection a step further, we realize that our real nourishment and shelter is love. Why? Because the soul is made for love. And I put a reference here to Bhagavad Gita 2:20. If you have a chance to read that, because it talks about the soul. So, okay, that I wanted to just bring up. That's how this book, Spiritual Warrior 2, opens, and then he goes into chapters on what is love and all. So, we have to understand that materialism is rooted in duality. And it's relative and impermanent. The material aspects of things are not their inner reality. And the materialist viewpoint focuses on the outer manifestation. So what is he saying here? A materialistic focus automatically disqualifies us from experiencing a deep level of love. Remember, loving others unconditionally is not based on a material understanding of life. Why? Because ultimately all love emanates from the reservoir of love, which is God. You see how it keeps bringing it to God, the Supreme Being. We've been separated for so long, and sometimes it's hard to reconnect or begin the process of reconnection. And he keeps repeating, and sometimes you have to hear something over and over. So finally he said, that's it, What's that? The light goes on. That's what the goal is. That's what I'm to be doing. Well, that's what I'm longing for. We must, he says, if we exclude God from the picture, what are we then? We're merely attracted to material commodities and phenomena. We cannot experience unconditional love. So as we grow spiritually, we will be constantly amazed at the amount of love we can experience and share. The spiritual world is filled with eternal, loving exchanges that do not end, deteriorate, or disappoint. Even minor competitions and arguments in such an environment merely serve to encourage more caring and sharing. Genuine love remains constant despite adversity. Love gives us the courage to maintain our position even if it's an unpopular one in any environment. What he's saying now, this does not mean that we should be foolish or naive. To deny unpleasant realities is to express the opposite of love. True love is based on honesty and trust, not avoidance. To love our neighbors as ourselves means to love them deeply as we ourselves would like to be loved. It also means to trust them. Honesty draws honesty to itself, and trust attracts trust. Without these qualities, there's no love. Now you may be saying, in this day, this age, you don't know what you're talking about. This isn't my words. This is Bhakti Tirtha Swami's words. Who can you trust? How can you trust? But I remember one time he gave a lecture on trust. And he was saying, if I recall, if you don't trust people, you have to look at yourself and see how trustworthy you are. Because as he said, that trust attracts trust. But on a practical level, he reminds us, we may wonder how to love an apparently unlovable person, or how to trust someone who has not earned our trust. Now we can approach such a person as we would a troublesome child. And he tells his parents normally do not adopt their conduct to that of the child. Instead, they help the child improve by modeling proper behavior and encouraging what is positive. You see that analogy he's giving us? To ask to the question, how to love an apparently unlovable person. Instead, he's talking about the child and the parent. Instead, the parent, they help the child improve by modeling proper behavior and encouraging what's positive. So that means you don't go to their level, whatever it is. Because again, he's talking to spiritual warriors whose focus is on Krishna, God, at the center and in their lives. So you don't have to go down a level. You're fixed in your understanding. Everyone has some good qualities, he reminds us, no matter how obnoxious they may seem to be. But we look for those good qualities. Now parents know their children's boundaries and are realistic about what is dangerous for them. So what do? They offer experiences according to their children's level of maturity, encouraging them to grow and protecting them from demands that might be too taxing. Now with this analogy, one does have to be mature and fixed and focused on the Supreme and have Him in our lives at all times in order to love an apparently unlovable person, or to trust someone who has not earned our trust. If we view If we refuse to view others as enemies, even if they try to hurt us, we can love almost anyone, he says. We must always remember that our so-called enemies have a desperate need for love, which they are expressing as best they know how, albeit in negative ways. When somebody's hurting you or coming at you really rough, it's hard to remember that. But again, if you are following the techniques, technology, teachings of our philosophy, and chanting and hearing and getting reconnected, developing a relationship with the Supreme Lord, then you yourself will be courageous, because he tells us love gives us the courage to maintain our position even in an unpopular one, even if it's an unpopular one in any environment. So if we go back to where we started, I read that the soul, we are eternal souls, beings, living entities, and we're part and parcel of the Supreme. So as we study and imbibe that and get an understanding of that, and as we were told, the soul is made for love, and it has to be expressed, and as we get stronger in that understanding, then we can, as he says here, we can love almost anyone. If we refuse to view that behavior and make them an enemy. As spiritual warriors, and he reminds us of what we're practicing here, spiritual warriors, we always have a choice in these circumstances. We can respond with compassion, or we can view these troubled people as enemies who have our destruction in mind. In the latter case, we become destructive ourselves because we are categorizing others as harmful agents. But if we can see them simply as misguided seekers of love, we can remain loving and communicate that love in non-threatening ways. Any questions, comments? He says we cannot love those whom we do not trust. So how do we extend our love and trust to unworthy people? Naturally, we do not want to victimize ourselves or others by ignoring their negativity or their negative behavior. We simply must be intelligent enough to know their limitations, supporting their positive characteristics, and refusing to provide temptations they cannot resist. This takes maturity. This takes being in a consciousness of fearlessness. This takes knowing Krishna is our best friend, our protector, always with us, and that he is in their heart as well as in ours, as he's told us in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. He says, for example, and he gives examples, we would not leave treasured possessions within the reach of a thief, but if we secure our valuables, we can trust the thief even in our own home. And if that thief or one has that tendency to steal, and they come and you don't act afraid of them or you're jittery about it, and again have this type of consciousness and know, as he said, that the person is also really desperate for love, but this is their way of expressing or getting what they think they need to feel love or to make them happier. And just as he said, we can trust alcoholics not to drink if we remove alcohol from their surroundings. In other words, we trust others by understanding their boundaries, removing temptations, and communicating our love. And as we said, the soul is made for love. You are an eternal soul, and you can express that love in a non-threatening way. If we are clever enough to have a realistic view of their weaknesses, we can nurture their strengths to the point that they can even overcome their negative behavior. This is how, in the proper frame of mind, we can trust virtually anyone. Quite a bit there to think about, but it's possible. Now, another aspect of trust relates to the issue of secrets and confidentiality. Indeed, our effectiveness as spiritual warriors committed to helping others is closely linked to how we handle secrets. Now, in the course of everyday life, almost all of us have kept secrets, shared them, betrayed them, or used them to exclude others and demonstrate our so-called superiority. You know, when I read that, I was trying to, when I read, I try to put things in perspective that I could. What I did, it's interesting, I went to the dictionary for some reason. Sometimes I like, and what did I find? One definition. I went to Google Dictionary. It doesn't break it down like my Merriam-Webster, but I didn't go there. Secrecy is the practice of hiding information from certain individuals or groups, perhaps while sharing it with other individuals. That which is kept hidden is known as a secret. But when he says here, used to exclude others and demonstrate so-called superiority. But he says secrets have no role in spiritual consciousness because they create barriers between people, interfere with our expression of love to others, and imply we have something to hide. Secrets create in-groups and out-groups, polarizing people into categories of friends and enemy, and destroying trust. He stresses, emphasizes that in spiritual life, and that's the life we're here for. That's the life we're practicing. If we're chanting, if we've been initiated, if we're desiring initiation, we're reading Prabhupada books, if we're reading Bhakti Tirtha, we are striving for a spiritual life, desiring a spiritual life. So he reminds us, in spiritual life, each of our actions must be an offering to God and his agents, so that everything we do, say, and seek becomes a means of glorifying God. In such a situation, what is the need for secrets? Healthy communities should not be overly attached to secrets. In fact, the lives of spiritual warriors should be open books. Why? Because the Lord is watching everything. The more God conscious we become, the more those around us will experience enlightenment. The more God conscious we become, the more those around us will experience enlightenment, exhilaration, and love. The more God conscious we become, the more those around us will experience enlightenment, exhilaration, and love. What is becoming more God conscious? By knowing who you are, who God is, and what we're his servants, and we're connected, we're his part and parcel, and the more we work with that. Unfortunately, many of us still do not want to be fully accountable to God, or even to our peers. And so we resort to secrets. We do not want anyone else to know what we have done, out of fear of being condemned for our behavior. I remember I had a flashback. I guess you could say, put the fear of God in my children. But I remember letting them know, I can't see everything you're doing, but God sees what you're doing wherever you are. So, my oldest daughter, I remember one time she told me later as she grew older, if she stubbed her toe, she wondered what she had done wrong, and was that her punishment. So she knew about karma at an early stage. But isn't this wonderful to have this drilled into us? We can't hide anything from God. So what is it? What is the need of secrets, he says? Spiritual life, each of our actions must be an offering to God and his agents, so that everything we do, say, seek, becomes a means of glorifying God. And in such a situation, what is the need for secrets? Our unwillingness to be accountable to God implies that we can hide from the Lord. Of course we cannot. Remember, the Lord in the heart witnesses everything we do. We should offer all our actions to the Lord with enthusiasm as part of our loving program of service for which we want to be accountable and recognized. When we think in this way about all our actions, we have nothing to hide, and we no longer desire to keep secrets. This is a wonderful section to meditate on. I know I'll think the next time I say it, I want to tell you something, but you got to keep it a secret. To look at myself. What have I done? What am I about to talk about? Why do I want it kept as a secret? Why don't I want anybody else to know about it? And then I can really examine and see if whatever it is or whatever, was I offering it to God and knowing that God knows, because He's right there in our hearts. And then maybe consider what opportunity I have to correct it or to rectify it or whatever it is, or really realize it's my own fear or false ego or what have you that thinks it was wrong, and look at it in a different light. So this was really powerful, this section. But then it goes into, there's a difference between secrets and confidentiality. Yes.
I was just going to ask that.
Okay. Certain actions are confidential, but not secret. For example, husband and wives make love. That is a part of their experience of exchange in conjugal life. And it is confidential. Indeed, few aspects of life are more confidential than exchanges of love. Yet, even when a husband and wife procreate, they do so in the conscious effort to glorify God. Their behavior becomes an offering, and although it's private, it's not kept secret. Confidentiality is often necessary for the development of trust, which, as we have just discussed, is an important aspect of love. That is why we have confidential aspects of our lives. However, although we are keeping parts of our experience from public view, confidentiality does not imply an intention to exclude. See, there's keeping secret, there's in groups, out groups, Don't let that one know. Don't look out for that. No. Rather, we simply do not want to cause unnecessary disturbance, and so, instead of revealing everything at first, we share information gradually. Now, spiritual life, he tells us, we're in spiritual life, spiritual warrior, requires confidentiality in situations where the entire truth would be dangerous to others. For example, in 16th century Bengal, Lord Chaitanya freely preached love of God to the public, but reserved certain intense spiritual experiences for a few highly evolved, prepared souls. Premature exposure to such experiences would be mind-boggling for the entire religious person. For the ordinary religious person. Lord Chaitanya's intent was not to be exclusive, but rather to protect those who could not handle such a level of intense love. This is the proper use of confidentiality. Again, I'm having it's like remembrance flashback when I first came early days in the Institute. There weren't too many senior devotees with Srila Krishnapada, as we called him at the time. And one gentleman, he was probably excited about new people coming in, and I was really hungry, thirsty, starving. Talk about starvation. I was starving for understanding who God is and myself. So he would start going into Bhagavatam. I didn't know Bhagavatam from anything. I had gotten Bhagavad Gita, and I was reading that and questioning and getting answers and becoming quite enlightened and enlightened. So what I would do at some point, he would go into this, and he had been with it for a long time, and all I could say is, that's enough. I can't take any more. I don't want to hear any more. Because it was really mind-boggling. Didn't quite understand it. It sounded all quite profound. And I had to stop him so I could more or less move, work, understand from the level where I was. So even in what Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, I've told you, but giving you confidential knowledge, but this is even more confidential, which is to help him understand more and more who Krishna is. So he tells us parents who love their children behave in a similar fashion. As children grow, the parents explain the same facts over and over again, each time with greater depth, according to the children's capacity to understand. Now, at first, parents may simply tell the very young children to stop a particular behavior. Later, they may state the moral and ethical reasons behind their command. Still later, they may teach the children in greater depth why such behavior is unacceptable. In each instance, they are explaining the same behavior at different levels. Confidentiality in spiritual life functions in the same way. A teacher can explain certain spiritual principles on an introductory level to the general public, go into more depth with an initiated group of disciples, and explore the same topic even more profoundly with a group of advanced students. And this is just helping my reflection of how Bhaktitirtha Swami understood this and expressed this. And he's trying to help us understand how to do that. He says, for example, beginners in spiritual life first learn a few elementary truths, such as, we're not the body. We can have a personal relationship with God. And spiritual life is about intense levels of love. Because newcomers are not overwhelmed with too much information at onset, they can hear these teachings without resistance. After the initial exposure, they can gradually gain deeper realizations according to their level of readiness. Confidentiality actually makes it easier to offer the higher knowledge when the time is right. Without it, new students might become overloaded and reject the entire body of teaching before ever having a chance to understand them. And I just got through reading from, where was I? Oh, Bhaktivedanta Swami's commentary on Sri Isopanishad, and he was discussing knowledge, on how to express it, and what was the point I wanted to make. While I was talking, it was so clear in my mind. Oh, of how we have to have compassion and understanding for newcomers who may come to the temple. We don't jump on, you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do that. In the beginning, you gradually tell them why, and then gradually you can tell them why we don't do this, but you don't bombard them with so much that they get confused or feel they're not wanted there or something, and then they want to leave. So, and that comes again from being grounded, for want of a better word, in knowing that we're loving beings. And with that groundedness, we would know how to approach a newcomer into the temple or into our environment. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions, any comments? How many in the chat room?
The same 3 and Libby.
Libby? Hi, Libby. Welcome. Any comments, any questions, any? Everybody have spiritual warrior too? Raise your hand. Anybody? I know Bhuvan Mohan has. Okay. No comments? No questions?
Libby says hi.
Huh?
Libby says hi.
Okay. Welcome, Libby. I hope you'll come again. Were you here for most of the class? Yes? Okay. Are you familiar with Bhaktivedanta Swami and Swami and his spiritual warrior books? Yeah?
She's been in the...
Huh?
She's been here before.
You've been there before. I didn't remember your name. Wonderful. Thank you for coming again. And I thank those of you who are there. Who is it? Who's there? Bhuvan Mahan?
Yeah, Carol and Shruti.
Bhakti and Carol. Bhakti and Shruti. Thank you so much for coming and being there. I hope you're hearing something that is helpful to you, will help you, improve and increase your spiritual life. I hope you will go to that loving place. Who you really are is a loving being anyway. And as he said, as we express that, we help others and enlighten others. And it's practice, because we're in this material world, we're in this material energy. And as he said from the very beginning, most of the paradigm is mostly commodities and all material, but we have to transcend that. So I hope this program is helping you. I've asked in the past, and I just will drop it again, if you've been able to use any of these technologies or concepts that Bhaktivedanta Swami is presenting to us, and it's helping you with your spiritual life. You can coordinate it with your Bhagavad Gita reading or any other readings, or if it even clarifies for you. I'd like to know if you take the time to write me at my email, address, which is Mother Indrani 108 at gmail.com. Or if you wanted to share it in the chat room. But it would be nice to see you. We've been here over 2 years now. Isn't that something? Over 2 years. And some of you have been with us a good length of time. So think about it. Try to put this into practice. I know you're all busy. You're students. You're working. You're studying. But this is also wonderful study too. And of course, I still have enough, I don't know if it's to put it enough, but false ego to want to know, am I getting anything across to you guys? Although I'm really feeling that by presenting it to you, I'm serving my spiritual master in some small way. Okay, so once again, any comments, any questions? Or just Haribol maybe?
There's a lot of Haribos and thank yous.
Okay, thank you for being there. Have a blessed, blessed week. And hopefully, prayerfully, we'll meet again and you'll bring a friend or tell a friend to tune in. Hare Krishna.